Well, hello friends. I am just about to go out to the garden with a bucket of soapy water because it is Japanese beetle season. And I don't know if any of you deal with Japanese beetles, but they can be a menace, right? So I am, especially for things in the garden, sometimes I will do different sprays like pyrethrin or spinosads, things like that. But right now they're on my eggplant really bad, and I just go try to knock them off a couple times a day with some soapy water. But I thought while we do that, it is a beautiful time in July to go on a garden tour, to just walk about, see what things are looking good. We have been lucky and had some really good rains, so I figure let's walk about. So we are right now just walking out to the vegetable garden, and the peppers are looking good. Everything is just really growing. Look at the chard and the beets. But what we are coming over to is, yep, you see the damage on them already. All those beetles are just munching away. So really, you know, organic sprays do not work that well for me, and I keep it organic always in my garden and as much as I can everywhere. So this is what I do. I will just knock them in these buckets, right here in this bucket, and do it a couple times a day because they can decimate and eat pretty quickly. Now, the plant will come out of it obviously, but the more I can get rid of, the better. It seems like every year lately, I get more and more beetles. And you know what? They're just a menace no matter what. So coming out and being able just to knock them in here, or just sometimes grab them like this into that soapy water where the soap catches them and then lets them sink down into the water. It's kind of the easiest method, especially if it's a small area, just like these eggplant are, to make sure I can get rid of them in the best possible way I can. And probably what I'll do is just, since I knocked a few off to go fly around, they'll probably be back pretty soon, some of them, so I will probably just come right back here in a few minutes and finish up. But these eggplant are doing really well. So you can see I do stake a lot of my things in the garden. We'll look at the peppers here soon too to show you that. That's just because it can get windy here. And these stakes keep them, I tie them to the stake, they keep them upright and they support them so as they get the heavy eggplant on them, they don't fall over in the wind and it doesn't weigh them down too much. So it just gives them extra support. Other than the eggplant, right now I have my cucumbers that I always plant right around the summer solstice. So they get planted mid to late June, and they're on both sides of multiple trellis going to my garden, and I will just weave them in as they grow. So these cucumber, I can just easily feed through. These aren't livestock fencing, but they look like they are, which you could make these trellises easily out of livestock fence if you wanted to. But as they grow, I just keep weaving them in and out. These I do keep sprayed with BT and or spinosad, and I'll do that all throughout the season to hopefully deter vine borers and these little corn beetles that I can get too, which usually helps. The hot peppers are really starting to grow and put on wonderful peppers. Now you can see the hot bananas are starting to really grow. That's what I always make my hot pepper mustard out of. But along with that, we have lots of jalapenos, serranos, poblanos, garden salsa, Anaheim chilies. All of these are really just starting to put on lots of beautiful fruit because it is a fruit. And you can see, look at these jalapenos. They're absolutely beautiful. These actually I didn't even realize had so many on it already. So these two are going to be cucumbers that are growing. On down, you can see my tomatoes are getting really large now. And what I do is I do still trim off the suckers as they grow, and I like to make sure I can just gently keep them within my cages just to keep them support. Now I do put a big U-post or T-post with my cages, again, so they don't flop over in the wind. I have some basil I recently planted at the bottoms. They can be companion plants and help hopefully deter bugs. I also just find I have space in the garden, and it just works well to have it here. So as this grows, I will continue to always come out and nip back pieces, take them in the kitchen and use them. And then this is gonna help the plant continue to flush out new growth. You always want new growth with a lot of herbs because that's what you're gonna use. If it goes to flower, that's gonna stop the plant from growing. So instead, always be nipping back your herbs, use them in the kitchen, let them dry, crumble them up and use them later, whatever you need to do, but make sure it keeps growing all your herbs by pinching them back. Right beside the tomatoes, you can see I have the cover for my cole crops, my broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, pushed back at the moment. I've been getting in heads of cauliflower. I've gotten in my main heads of broccoli, but I leave the plants and now I'll be getting in just little florets all throughout the season. Some of my cauliflower this year is pretty late, but it is still creating heads, so I'm leaving it. And then we have Chinese cabbage, which these two heads I think are ready to get. It's beautiful tight head right here. And then a lot of my others, I've started to get in some. You can see where I have empty spaces. Some of them are always a little later. Savoy has a longer growing season, so it is still growing, and the red rocket cabbage always takes longer too, but it's absolutely beautiful. Down here, I've already harvested my garlic. The rhubarb, I let it go just so it can regenerate and I don't stress it during the summer. And obviously the asparagus is now gonna be dormant until next season. I feel like a vegetable garden, while we have a lot of spring crops, those are more the ones we just kind of cut, enjoy, the lettuces, the greens. But as we get into summer, that's when we start getting really excited, not only to eat the fresh tomatoes and the peppers, but to can too. So I'll be doing lots of salsa soon. I'll be doing the hot pepper mustard like I mentioned. I'll be doing tomato juice, tomato sauce. All those things are coming up, and that to me is always kind of an exciting part. So as we walk away from the vegetable garden back here, which the rains this year have made it really happy, we're walking up into the pathway garden, which if you remember, I just recently posted the second part of this video. Now we are in July now. I planted this pathway. I finished it up in early June, I think. The video didn't post till a little bit later, but that means in only about 4 weeks, I want to show you all the growth in this bed. So you can see just from a few weeks, these perennials are really starting to grow. So the heat, the humidity we've had, but coupled with inches of rain we've had in the last few weeks, these rudbeckia were really 4-inch size ones, and look how large they're growing. The Culver's root is not only growing, but it's blooming. The Sangusorbia is growing. I see a weed right there I need to get. That's growing too. You know what, guys? I cannot leave a weed. We're gonna get a little button weed right here. But all these things are just growing by leaps and bounds. This is Summer Magic Nepeta. It is growing so well. Look at that rudbeckia over there that's blooming. I've been setting some park benches I have. I recently got this one at a flea market, but I've been setting them here thinking for now I'm gonna put some benches here. I like the color of that one, so I wanna paint these two the same park bench green. You know, I think as I've started to plant more perennials again, especially ones that are usually drought tolerant, can do well once they're established, this is the perfect year to have planted anything because everything needs water when it's first planted, and these can really show that they're doing well. But it also shows how quickly they grow. And when we walk on down the path here in a minute, I'll show you last year's that were planted compared to this year's, so you'll know in 1 year what these are gonna do. But before we do that, I'm walking over to my fire pit area to show some of my citrus is now sitting out here. My fig trees are sitting out here, and they're all doing really well. So my figs are usually dormant during the winter. Where I live in Iowa, Zone 5B, I cannot have these varieties of figs. There is a couple that can do some winter. I never have good luck with them. So I keep them in patio containers, terracotta containers that I take in the winter, let them go dormant. They lose their leaves. They stay just above freezing, cold enough to stay dormant and dark, so they don't want to push out leaves. And then when I bring them out in the spring, they get figs. It's the easiest thing and one of the best ways to me to have a tree that usually we can't grow here. All the rain has actually caused this one to need to be restaked, so I'll have to restake it. But look, it is loaded with Corky's Delight figs. The one behind me is loaded with, I think these are brown turkey figs. So beautiful and so easy and fun because you know what? I can't usually get all these figs in Iowa, so I'm really enjoying them. I had this path, remember, all this edging was put in with the path. So it re-edged this area and squared everything up correctly. I had first put it in about 12 years ago. So it now kind of corrected some of the lines that I originally had done. So I'm pretty excited with how that looks. I also brought out my bay trees. If you were following on stories, I recently cleaned them up, nipped off any of kind of the spent growth, and all that nipping did, you can see all this new growth now that's coming. So pruning a plant, whether it's something like an herb like these bay trees, I have 2 of them, or anything, what it does is once you cut it, it causes a place for it to want to grow. So in this case, I'm helping new growth really come out of these bay trees, and you can see both of them. Look at all of that growth they have. Before we finish going around that pathway, I want to show this bed really changes with each season, and it kind of excites me to see how it can go from year to year. So in the spring, we have peonies that bloom. They did wonderful, obviously, but they have a short season. So what we're just getting into is some of the summer blooms. A lot of the allium have not started yet, but you can see the beginning of the millennium allium, which have big pockets all the way down. So what I do is have repeating groupings of about 5 plants usually. So 5 allium, 5 allium, 5 allium, all the way down. And in between that, I have my betony, which just finished blooming, and I really should trim it back because a lot of times you can see it's right here. It just finished blooming, so it's just in time for the allium to really pick up. The garden phlox are just about to open. A couple of them are. You can see right there is a garden phlox, and those will keep blooming. I have calamint, that white, beautiful calamint that attracts so many pollinators, is just about to bloom. So we're gonna continue to have blooms and color in this bed, even though spring is over. Joe Pieweed is wanting to grow, and it's gonna be blooming soon, and some asters. If you don't cut a lot of the asters back, this is a woods variety of aster, they're gonna bloom in the summer. If you cut them back kind of late spring, they'll bloom more in the fall, like the ones we purchase. I just let them bloom when they wanna bloom. I don't worry about that. But all these allium are really starting to take on their color, and I really just kind of enjoy it because what you're gonna notice is my roses aren't blooming because, again, the Japanese beetles kind of decimate them no matter what I do to them. So I don't worry about those, and what I do is I let other things bloom that can take over. So that's really, to me, what this bed has been kind of more working towards, is having blooms that can come on at different times of the season and still look really good no matter what time of year we're in. What I even love about this bed is in the winter, it pretty much all goes dormant except for those green mountain boxwood you see going down the line that I'm trying to grow all to the same size and shape. So in the winter, you still get some structure. And then in the spring, summer, fall, you get all that foliage from the perennials that comes back. So as we're walking back over towards the path, we're gonna just be grazing past this kind of bed that's out in the middle of nowhere. So this bed, on this side I have all of my succulents and agave that are kind of smaller that I have been babying along. There's different varieties on here. And they're either starts I've gotten from friends, ones I found at different places that I kind of want to collect, just kind of a different variety. But on the other side, let's go around here so you can see these gorgeous, I know, the hydrangeas. We're coming into hydrangea season. So behind me are a Seaside Serenade, Bar Harbor series. I think they're a Monrovia growing hydrangea. They do really well for me in full sun if they get the good water they need. This year, obviously, they have. What I like about this series, they stay upright. They stay a little bit more compact, but still that white mop head flower, which works really well. So even from a distance, since the backyard can be lengthy, from a distance or from the house, I can see this big swath of white blooms on these hydrangea, and it just really is kind of eye-catching. As we come over back to the path, I placed 2 large agave that I just keep in these containers and take in over the winter right here. I put some dichondria here that are trailing out. I think there's some wire vine back behind it too. They're very stately. You know, next year in the future, someday, I would love to have some type of big table here. A teak one would be really fun so I could entertain out here. We'll see. It's going to be an investment piece someday, so I'm kind of just waiting to make sure I know what I want to put there. For now, I'm kind of enjoying the benches, and I could even move my fire pit out here if I wanted to. But you can see again, all this bed and how well things are growing in. So a lot of the salvia when I planted them, the caradonna, I trimmed them back so they'd flesh out new growth and be able to put that first energy into the roots instead of just into the blooms that were on it when I purchased them or when they came to me. And a lot of the rudbeckia now are just beginning to bloom. So all these things are gonna just be a sea of color and really look good. But what I wanna show you is if we go all the way down here, if you start noticing these big perennials, this is everything I planted last year. So look at the difference 1 year makes. Last year, this year. So just think in 1 year how this bed that I just planted, how it is going to be full. All these colors are gonna be mixing into each other. The plants are gonna be growing into each other. And that was really, to me, the whole purpose of this bed. What I do wanna show you, because I'm just noticing as we're standing here, if we walk back here, we're gonna see that the big row of Limelight hydrangeas is just about to bloom. So we're in early, everything here is about 2 weeks ahead, I would say, of normal year to year, just because everything here started early with an early spring. But look at these blooms of Limelight hydrangeas. So right now, these are in their 4th year. They're gonna continue to grow. They'll get taller than the arborvitaes. So you will see these from the yard side, which is what I really love. They're gonna get 8 to 10 foot tall, full of blooms. And you can see they're just starting to open up. There's a Japanese beetle in there right there. But they usually don't do too much damage to these, just a little bit. Every time I show these, usually someone asks, why are they hiding behind a row of arborvitae? These are woodward arborvitae shrubs. It's not that they're hiding. In time, they are gonna grow larger, and I wanted them as a hedge themselves. And my whole point was I want them to peek out over these arborvitae. I just always, for some reason, in my head viewed that as what I wanted. I also always knew I wanted that big row so I could go cut as many as I wanted without worry. So that's why I like them back there. If I want to cut some of the ones towards the back, I don't have to worry about taking the ones that you see. So I really actually like them back there. We're walking on down the path and I want to show you everything right now here is in full bloom. So a lot of times it seems like maybe I don't have perennials in all parts of my yard, but it's hard to see them all at once, right? So while the back of the shed maybe right now is in kind of a stagnation period where the alliums are just beginning, the betony is over, this bed that I can view from the windows in my house, especially my office, is in full bloom. So this bed, if you were here, you could hear almost the buzzing sound of all the pollinators. If we look really closely, there are bees. Look at that bee right there, just going to all that work. Right on the Culver's root. We have calamint that's going. We have Rudbeckia. This is Goldstrom. I usually plant, I think all the ones I planted this year too, or they're all Goldstrom. I usually like that variety. They do reseed, and I want that. I want all these plants to seed and just kind of grow into each other. And you can see there's little starts of Rudbeckia coming. If I wanted, I could dig these up and move them. The allium, millennium, usually in the past, we're supposed to have sterile seeds, meaning they don't reseed. I find they do reseed, so, and that's fine with me. The Blue Fortune Agastaki back here, look how big it has gotten. It's probably about 4 foot, if not 5 foot. It is just full of bees doing their thing. I love that. And if you take a leaf and just smell it, I know you can't smell it. It smells like, it has this nice licorice type anise smell, but not to the point where if you don't like licorice, you would not like the plant. It's really a beautiful scent, and it just has so many blooms. So all the way down this path, look how they cascade over the path. This was my vision and my hope. And to me, it's just so exciting that even 1 year in, I'm already able to notice all that growth it's having. I think it's always, we have ideas, we have visions. As a gardener, you have big dreams, and then what do we have to do? We have to have patience. I do not have patience. I have, it's actually like always been my thing. I have like no patience. And so perennials are the thing that we should always know and remember that we can plant for when we don't have patience, because they are going to give us nearly instant gratification. Not only in a few months after you plant them, but 1 year in, you're gonna feel like they've been there for a few years. And that, to me, you can't get with trees, you can't get with shrubs, but you can get it with certain perennials. So that's where leaning into perennials and leaning into plants that can really do well like that make a huge difference. So if you remember fall last year, I put a big millstone. I have one more of these that I haven't used yet, I'm waiting, but here at the corner to kind of feel like this beautiful corner piece and share a little bit of interest on the path. But what I like is the Agastaki I have here on the corner here, it's starting to, they both kind of are growing tall enough that it encompasses what feels like a little passageway around the corner. I love that. But as you walk around the corner, the landscape changes slightly. So on this side, what I have is a lot of Terra dropseed. It's a prairie dropseed grass. It's the Terra variety, meaning it's a little bit more upright, a little bit smaller habit. They will get bigger than this. These were plugs I just planted this year, and you can see already they're growing pretty well. They will grow to the point where they just begin to touch each other and kind of waterfall into each other. And then this side is mixed in with some penstemon that will reseed and add more plants, some baptisia. I love how the baptisia has just beautiful interest even right now. It has so much texture on the foliage. My big thing also in the garden, as I've been gardening the last few years, has been to try to, since I wanted this path to create a beautiful corner and stopping point to my yard over here, and it really now does. As you look down, it creates this end point and a point, pretty much, a reason to come over to this side of the yard. Before it was just empty and there was really nothing over here. Now there's a reason to walk on a path, meander over here, enjoy something, and have places that you can sit and enjoy it too. So I got these willow chairs earlier this year. I just actually got this table today at a flea market, so I added the table. But these chairs to me offer such a nice space if you're out here just by yourself, or if you're out here with a friend. You can actually bring coffee out here in the morning if you want to. But having moments around my yard, I have benches, remember, over there, where you can stop and just take it in. There's nothing like that, because we need those places to remind us to sit. Because if you're like me and you like to garden, it's easy to never sit and actually enjoy it, but instead always be working in it. Like as I'm here doing this tour, I notice a weed here or there where I need to come out and weed. I notice little things I want to do. But having these spaces remind us also to sit and enjoy. So this chair's for you, by the way, so you can sit too. And yes, these chairs are in the grass, so when I mow, I move them and then I set them back. I kind of like how they feel whimsical out here in the yard. You can kind of see when I step back, they're just something nice that I can view from the house if I want to, and they just really add some nice kind of organic interest. But as we come back up here, you're gonna notice the shade garden under the trees this year is starting to look much happier with the rain. On this side, I have kind of it's a bench I created out of old cornerstone pieces that I found. But here around it, I just have some various agave, a big pencil cactus, because, you know, they're in containers. I put them in my plant room over the winter and I can just set them here just to decorate. I try to think of the outdoors as a different version of the indoors, with places to decorate, places to do things. So right here on this area, a lot of the hosta were just put in last year. So they were smaller starts, but they're starting to grow in really well. I keep 2 containers under this tree just to add some color. So the Sun King Aurelia is obviously adding that chartreuse color really well, and it's growing a lot this year compared to last year. The hosta obviously do, and I know a lot of people don't like the blooms on hosta. I know I actually have quite a few friends that will go out and trim them off because they don't like the blooms. That's completely fine. For some reason out here, I don't mind the blooms. I let them go. They're a bloom, so I leave them. Now, if they do bug you, of course you can go out and just trim them off and just grow the hosta for the foliage and texture. The containers I planted here have really started to fill in with the heat and humidity. So they have a griffin begonia in the back. They have 2 batwing begonias. They have a plumosa, which is like a asparagus fern variety, a wire vine, and a transcantia is that white and green variegated trailing that really can take over in a good way in the summer and cascade out. You know, in previous years, the issue with this bed is it's under 2 trees, an old crabapple and a big maple. And that means there's shallow roots under it that can really suck the water. This year it's doing really well. I planted a lot of hellebores in here in the spring because once they're established, hellebore can take drier conditions. Obviously they need to be established before they can do that. But I want those to start growing enough that there's a nice foliage cover, even when the hosta have years where maybe they don't get as big. A lot of these hosta now are newer, so they're smaller, but eventually a lot of them should get some good size to them as they can. I am someone that, and maybe you're like this too, you always want what you don't have. And I don't have where I live. I'm in a big open area. I don't have a lot of shade. And I didn't grow up, which I grew up across the road, I didn't grow up with a lot of shade either. So I've always dreamed of having a shade garden. This is my one shade garden. It's the only area that I have shade, and it is not a moist shade. It is a dry shade. So I do have some epimedium there too that can take dry shade, and it's doing quite well. Sun King Aurelia can take dry shade once that chartreuse green, once it's established. But what I want to show is the front bed because it is starting to fill in so well with all the stockies. If we start here on the corner, I planted this spring quite a few of the all gold Japanese forest grass. I want them to obviously fill in, just cascade out. I love that bright green color again because it works so well with the Sun King Aurelia. But if we come around the corner here, we're coming into full southern sun. So right here is stockies, lamb's ear. I do the big ears variety or Helen von Stein. That's the same variety, just 2 different names. And this one in general, the idea is you grow it mostly for foliage, not for blooms. Both Helen von Stein, big ears, they have minimal blooms. If they do have a bloom, I usually do pluck that one off just because it's not quite what I'm going for. I'm going more for kind of a almost ground cover like foliage in front. I like that silvery color. They like dry feet. They do not like to stay wet. They like to dry out well. So the southern side here is doing really well. These are all an older boxwood variety. They're not quite the dark glossy green leaf. These are called winter green. And 2 of them are old from when my grandma and grandpa lived here. They were probably planted 25 years ago. All the rest of them I have planted, and I'm slowly over time letting them get to this size. And then I would probably let these get a little bit bigger, but I want to wait until all the others, which they're starting to fill in now and get larger. Once they all get to the same size, then I might let them grow a little bit bigger. So up on the front porch, you can see the ferns and everything are just doing so well. I got new hanging pots this year, and they're a 17-inch wide pot, which means I can let the ferns, I put Kimberly ferns in them, Kimberly queen ferns, because it's on the south side. So this is south side. They get quite a bit of full sun, and look how well they do. They never burn. That's what's great about Kimberly ferns. And the 17-inch pot lets their roots get quite large. They've been working really well. I have a video I posted about planting these. I put a little bit of that soil moist product with them to help retain that moisture. And honestly, I was worried about the cocoa liner, which is that kind of organic looking liner, which I love the look of, but I worry it dries out so quickly. It hasn't. It's been doing really well. So up here, I've actually been spending a lot of time in the mornings or sometimes the evenings, just sitting on the front porch. It's been beautiful. The weather's been nice. You know, I bring out a lot of plants I save over the years. My Salum philodendrons are here. I have some elephant ear up there. I have some ferns. Just got the ghost pothos from a friend, so I put that up there. Thank you, Jim. And yeah, the whole area has just been ripe with kind of just beautiful green texture. Now, what I did do this year is I added this marble table I had in the house at one point. It's an antique kind of trestle table. And I just adorn it almost like I would have in the house. I have some antique birdhouses on it, has a couple little cast iron pots. In front of it, I have a little collection of some watering cans. And it's just kind of given me joy. You know, sometimes I think treating the outdoors like the indoors, it's a special thing. Living in the country, I've always been scared to have too much outside because you get lots of dust, you get lots of dirt. But you know what? At the same time, we have to do things that we enjoy. So yeah, I have to clean it every so often, obviously, clean the dust off of it. But it's a really nice space to just enjoy some of the things on my front porch in an area that wasn't used that much. I used the front side with the benches and the chairs, but that side here I wasn't. Now, I think we planted this, I forget which video it was this spring, but it was a big, beautiful, look back here. Yeah, all succulents that I saved. So that's the burrow's tail you see right here. And then inside of that, you see all of that gorgeous texture in there. So that one is doing really well. It loves the heat, it loves the sun. What you probably hear, or you might start hearing, is the fountain. So I posted this fountain, how I put it together, probably a while ago, but you can find that video. But what this was an antique water trough, cast iron from the late 1800s, and I put some copper fittings with it, and I made it into a fountain that I love because you hear it if I have windows open or if you're just walking to the front door. So this is the entry to the door. It's really a side door where people come and enter my house. I have lots of boxwood here that I want to grow into each other. I want them to cloud eventually, meaning they grow into each other with kind of undulating patterns and shapes. But up here is right where then you walk past this fountain. So you can see I have hardly had to refill it, especially because we've had rain. The wind does not take away the water because it's a low enough bubbler on all three that it just perfectly stays in there. What I really love is that I can see it from the kitchen window and hear it from the house. And that to me is what's been really exciting. So right up by the front door this year, I switched it up and I put one of my saved elephant ear. I think this is coffee cups. I think it's coffee cups or heart to heart. I've saved this one now for 3 years probably, and in various starts of it. It does so well when I put it out. So I have some lemon coral sedum under it. I have some perennial oregano, or some ornamental oregano, I should say. And that's doing well. Last year I planted in a 7 sunflower ornamental multi-stem. It's a very moderate, lower ornamental kind of shrub tree. It will get probably 12, 15 foot tall, but I have the space here. So I really want it to have kind of a nice shape eventually with those multi-stems you can see coming out of it, just so it has, and it gets a nice late season bloom on it. So that's what I really love about it. Just a unique kind of ornamental tree and one that I enjoy. Behind me, you're gonna see who I lovingly refer to as Veronica. It's the big agave that I got from my friend Ramona, who had it in her family. Her parents had it, her grandparents may have had it. It's a massive old agave, and so many pups come off of it. So it's one of those fun agave that you can give to so many people, and then they always remember where it came from and that it came from this mother plant. So I always think that's really fun. I often always put it under my kitchen window because that's a big cast iron urn and it fits. So it needs a big pot. And it has a lot of presence and it takes no work. So I don't have to do anything to it. I stick it in there. I put a few plants underneath it. This year I'm trying some different ones. I have a carex, a lime green carex, and then I have some ornamental oregano again, and I have some different types of pilea under there that are actually starting to grow really well. So I really enjoy that. And then right here, this container in front that you walk past, I have 2 of these containers. How full and beautiful are they? They have batwing begonias, they have a caladium and a Kimberly queen fern, and then in front there is some of that transcantia. So all of it is just coming to life. You know, all those containers that we planted in the spring, this is when they really start growing, when you have that humidity, when you have that warmth. And that's why I'm walking across the driveway, because I want to show you these gorgeous, gorgeous planters that are now just starting to bloom. So across the driveway here, I have 3 of these planters in this bed, which it probably only gets at most 6 hours of sun. So someday, as things keep growing, I may not be able to put mandevilla in them. But right now I have these peach mandevilla. I think peach Sunday was maybe what they were called. I love them. I love them because they show up well against the dark green arborvitae wall that's behind them. I have some beautiful purple leafed begonias beyond, a little bit of that Rex Griffin begonia in the back. And then of course some big lemon coral sedum. The transcantia in this one has seemed a little bit more sad compared to, if you come over here, look at this one. Like you can see this one now is growing really well, which is more what I wanted, as is this one over here. This one has so much growth to it. So they're just doing so well, and they're just beginning their big supply of blooms. They've been blooming ever since I planted them, but they're now putting on, you can see all these pockets of blooms. So all 3 of them, when you drive in, just are full of blooms and have so much color. Every year, I either change something, try something new. You know, mandevilla, the ones I put in here last year, I think were a white one, and they just never did quite what I wanted. These peach ones have really been just pleasing this year. They do really well with those begonias underneath them. They grow well, they like the heat, they like the sun, obviously. That's why mandevilla, so many people love them, and they're just beginning with their blooms. That's what's great. We're just going in July when a lot of these things are putting on so much growth and so much blooming. That's exactly what you want. My front flower beds by the entry, they are just beginning with their allium. So all the cat's pajamas, they already bloomed. I trimmed them back a couple weeks ago, so they will be fleshing out new blooms. So any nepeta or anything that has bloomed early, salvias, you can trim them back. They'll flesh out new growth. They'll bloom again. But now all this is going to be full of allium blooms really soon. That's the summer blooming allium. So that's kind of what's going on and blooming in my garden right now. It's quite a bit. We're getting into some of my favorite parts of the season, when hydrangeas are going to be on full display, especially those limelights, when the allium, summer allium, are going to be on full display, and the containers really fill in. What I hope you can gain from this is just some excitement maybe, or some like inspiration to say, hey, that's a plant I didn't know existed. I'm gonna try that one. That's what I do. When I follow someone, I wanna see what works for them, what grows in that garden. This is zone 5B in Iowa. Obviously it can change depending on what zone you're in, or you know what, you might be in the same zone and certain plants don't work for you. I always find we all have different ones that work for us. Even if we live in an area where everything should work, it doesn't. Things die. I have things die too. So I hope you enjoy it. We'll of course keep doing more tours. I'll probably do one at my mom's next eventually, so you can go back and forth and see what's growing, because so many times you were asking, hey, I remember when you planted blank, how's it growing now? We'll do follow-up videos because her bed that I planted this spring is looking so good. I can't wait to show you. Happy gardening.